The Supreme Court strikes a serious blow to a Republican redistricting plan in Alabama that crammed black voters into urban districts so their votes wouldn't have much impact in other areas of the state. The court's decision comes on the heels of the 50th anniversary of the march from Selma to Montgomery. Yesterday in Montgomery, thousands of people concluded a modern-day march that retraced the historic route in 1965. Of course, that was the historic Selma to Montgomery march, and it concluded with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with his speech there in the state capitol from the Capitol steps. This is an issue because also Alabama is the flashpoint for the Supreme Court decision 2 years ago that struck down Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act. And there's a call for this Congress to restore those rights. There's a bill being co-sponsored by Republican Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner of Wisconsin, as well as Congressman John Conyers from Michigan. But the GOP, they have not stepped up and gotten behind that particular bill. Joining us from Skype via Montgomery is State Senator and Minority Leader Quentin Ross, and of course our panel still there in D.C., Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, Dr. Jason Johnson, as well as Gilda Daniels, and I'm of course broadcasting live from 30 Rock in New York. Senator Ross, I want to go to you first, and that is the Supreme Court decision is critically important because we see this all across the South. We see this where what Republican legislatures have done, and let's also be honest, in the past, we've seen it with some Democratic legislatures, where in an effort to sort of have these super majorities of African American elected to Congress, they will basically take this map and it'll be like a snake, and they'll try to find every black voter to put them in this congressional district. That simply doesn't make sense because they don't want black voters being able to impact these other seats. Isn't this a fundamental problem we have in this country when it comes to gerrymandering?
It is, and of course Alabama is a flagship for that type of activity. And of course the Supreme Court decision coming down on yesterday, the 25th, was poetic justice in my mind, as we finish the last leg of the commemoration of the Voting Rights March from Selma to Montgomery. But it sends the message, it signals to those states that have taken the supermajority, the Republican supermajority, that we are going to have to really look closely at the way that they have gerrymandered these districts. District 26, which I represent in Montgomery, is one that is mentioned often in the court case as well as his decision. I enjoy a 55 to 65% African-American population, but during the redistricting, I now enjoy maybe 75, almost 80% African-American.
Wow.
Basically, which renders individuals in other districts almost helpless in terms of being able to impact the outcome of elections. And I would like to think as an elected official that I could appeal, because in the elections it's 50+1. But I think that I have the ability to represent across all lines individuals and win an election without such a healthy majority.
Jason, this is a fundamental issue that we're seeing because this is really about the diluting of power. And that is, there's this whole view in terms of, how African Americans are going to vote, the impact they could actually have. It is a fundamental issue that we have. And I think it also, Cornell Belcher talks about this here.
Right.
African Americans also have to realize this impacts, even if you have Hispanics in a district, because folks say, well, we want a black member of Congress, but if the districts are being packed, you actually are lessening your power.
Yes.
Because you can only vote in one congressional district or one state senatorial district when you could actually impact 5, 6, 10 different seats.
First off, I want to compliment the state senator for being so candid. I mean, there are certain members, representatives who would say, no, just give me a district that's 85% black folks. So I want to congratulate him for actually believing in the American democracy and how it's supposed to function one way or another. And Roland, I completely agree with you. Not only is this an issue of diluting African American votes, but this is also a challenge to us that when these districts get broken up, we got to turn out and vote. We got to influence things like we did in the Senate race in Arkansas. We have to influence things like we did in Tennessee when Cohen got elected. This is an opportunity for African Americans to flex our political muscle at a time where the South is still changing demographically.
Avis and Gilda.
That's exactly right. And I would have to say that, you know, we are voting more. If you look at what's going on right now in terms of voting turnout, black people are quite frankly leading the nation in the last couple of elections, and we are really outpacing other communities of color by a long mark, especially black women leading the nation in terms of voting turnout. And so I think that that's really the reason why we're seeing this hyper actions on the part of Republicans in terms of trying to consolidate the power. They know that they're losing the demographic race, not only in Alabama, but in other states across the nation. Texas and Georgia, for example, are going to be flipping pretty soon. They're no longer going to be solidly red states in terms of the demographics of the states. And so what they're trying to do is to figure out how can we dilute the voting power of communities of color. We're going to do it by making it difficult for people to get IDs and requiring people to have IDs. We're going to do it by creating these crazy gerrymandered districts. And I'm so happy to see that for once the Supreme Court got it right.
Well, I think certainly on this instance, I was very afraid that the Supreme Court would get it wrong, but they did get it right in this instance, because we are talking about racial gerrymandering and how the Alabama legislature actually packed black voters into a few districts so that they could not use their voting strength in other districts. And it certainly was good for Republicans in that these districts are very, very Democratic. But we will see in some states like Alabama and also in North Carolina where the Democratic caucus will soon only be the black caucus,
right,
because they have not allowed other voters to be dispersed throughout the district. So instead of cracking districts, they are packing districts. And that's what Republicans tend to do, but Democrats tend to crack the districts in distributing them so sparsely that you can also lose your voting strength as well. I live in Maryland, where we have a district that goes through quite a number of counties, right? So that can increase the Democratic voting strength, not the black voting strength. And I do think that black voters, that we all need to look at how this affects black voting power.
Senator Ross, Supreme Court sent it back to review. And so what's the next step for you and folks there in Alabama?
Well, listen, Roland, I had the opportunity, along with the then chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus, Senator Bobby Singleton, to listen to the oral arguments in this case. We left the Supreme Court kind of uncertain of what our future would be. But to our surprise and jubilation, they sent this case back to the district courts here, where I had the opportunity to testify. But they've said that they need to go back and look at these claims more closely as we look at what has happened throughout the state of Alabama. And I think the last speaker said it best, that what we've done is rendered the Democratic Party somewhat limited to a black party. In the state Senate, we have 8 Democrats and we have one white we have one white Democrat, which is Senator Billy Beasley. And so on the House side, we may have 5 members in the House of Representatives that are white Democrats. And so there was a method to the madness. And I think what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to go back to the drawing board because of the deviation that they used, which was a strict deviation, the 1% deviation, when we could have used a 5% deviation and really got a better looking map. So,
well, Senator Ross, first of all, I'll say this here. To me, this is not a Democratic or Republican question. What it is, though, that even when you have those districts that might elect a Republican, this still limits the power of African American voters for those individuals representing those constituencies. So we'll keep following this case. We certainly appreciate it, Senator Ross. Thanks a lot.